When we talk about climate change, we always hear from scientists, experts, those in big organizations. But how about those in our villages? The farmers, the elders, and those that have lived in the land for years. Hello everyone, and welcome to this video. And in this video, I'd like us to talk about how African indigenous knowledge can work hand in hand to solve climate problems. I mean the words of mouth passed on from our grandparents to our parents. Whenever we talk about climate change solutions, the conversations too often begins and ends in laboratories, data rooms, or policy halls. Scientific models, satellite imagery, international agreements, and the likes dominate the headlines. But for millions of Africans, especially those in rural areas and climate vulnerable communities, solutions don't always begin with algorithm. They begin with intuition, rituals, stories, and memory. And it is important to briefly but meaningfully talk about African indigenous knowledge systems. Now, it's a knowledge system that is rich and mysterious, yet rooted in lived experiences and passed through generations. This knowledge has long guided how communities respond to environmental changes. Yet, for decades, it's been dismissed or sidelined in favor of Western democratic approaches. But you know what? Today, it is beginning to change, and that is right. The truth is, indigenous knowledge and science don't need to compete. They can and they must work hand in hand if they really want to succeed. Now, long before the modern meteorological station arrived, African farmers could read the skies, literally. They understood the behavior of the birds, the movement of the clouds, or the flowering of certain trees to predict rains. That sounds interesting, right? Now, in part of northern Nigeria, for instance, elders have long used the fruiting circles of the locust bean tree and the nesting patterns of weaver birds to estimate the coming season's rainfall. Now, this is a skill that is used in communities that lack formal forecasting services. These observational skills are not superstition. They are science built from decades of pattern recognition and ecosystem understanding. What's more, they are often highly localized, providing microclimate insights that satellite data may miss. Now imagine the power of combining the grassroots insights with weather forecasting tools. Imagine weather apps built not just on machines, but on the lived memory of the land. That sounds so beautiful. The problem, however, is not whether indigenous knowledge is useful, it is whether it's taken seriously. Because too often, development programs or climate initiatives arrive in African communities with a solution-first mindset, and they overlook the local practices and see them as outdated or irrelevant. In doing so, they not only alternate the very people they aim to help, but also they miss out on valuable resources for co-creating effective interventions. Yet, where communities are invited as co-creators and not just recipients, something very powerful happens. In Kenya's Turkana region, for example, climate scientists have worked with pastoralist community to map traditional grazing routes alongside satellite imagery of vegetation cover. Now, these have helped reduce livestock death during drought while preserving community trust in traditional ways of life. It's a real-time partnership between data and wisdom, science and story. The perceived divide between science and indigenous knowledge, it's not natural. It's a colonial legacy. During colonization, African knowledge systems were systematically devalued. Oral traditions were seen as unscientific, herbal medicines were dismissed, local ecological practices were branded as backward. These narratives have lingered in education systems, policy rooms, and even the media. To heal this divide, we need more than inclusion. We need co-validation. That means treating indigenous knowledge not as a footnote or cultural artifact, but as a partner in innovation. It means funding research that honors both elders and scientists. It means creating platforms where data analysts and the traditional ruler can sit at the same table with equal voice. I know many will disagree, but it just needs to happen. In Nigeria, local farmers in the Middle Belt region have used agroforestry techniques that predate modern climate-smart agriculture intercropping legumes with cereal crops, rotating fields to avoid soil depletion, or using organic mulch to retain water. These are not new ideas, but they are now being recognized as low-cost or low-tech climate solutions. Imagine if extension services integrated these traditional practices into their training. Imagine if young agripreneurs could build apps that digitize local farming wisdom, preserving it while scaling it. Now that is where tradition meets technology, or that is where technology meets tradition, however you may put it. As Africa confronts the twin challenge of climate adaptation and economic growth, we cannot afford to ignore half of our intellectual resources. Indigenous knowledge isn't a relic. It's a living system of resilience, especially in a continent where formal infrastructure may be lacking, but community knowledge runs deep. Blending indigenous wisdom with scientific tools is not only practical, it's also empowering. It acknowledges that Africans have not been passive victims of climate change, but active stewards of their environment. It opens up a more inclusive and more holistic way of thinking, one that is not top-down but side by side. In the end, the most powerful solutions won't come from choosing between tradition and technology. They will come from braiding them together, weaving a future that draws strength from both. And when we do that, when the drone pilot and the village elder can speak and be heard, we will not just be solving climate problems, we'll be restoring dignity, trust, and balance to how knowledge is shared and valued in Africa. The truth is, Africa has always had answers. The problem is we've not just been listening enough. It's not about choosing between tradition and technology. Once again, it's about using both together. So let's value our wisdom and build the future our way. Thank you so much for joining. Do well to subscribe, like, and share this video. I am Elefachi, and I will see you in the next video.